Thank you to all the amazing listeners out there. On behalf of the Reef podcast, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for future mentions and new episodes. Have a great day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Reef podcast. I'm your host, Luis IPA, here joined by Nightmare Rising. How you doing, my good friend?
Hello, Sharky.
Man, it's another Sunday in the Reef podcast. Man, I feel like every time we do these, it's like constant now. Like it becomes a habit now to actually do it every Sunday. But unfortunately, we do not do it every Sunday. We do it every two. We do 2 or 3 depending on the month. But ladies and gentlemen, we have an amazing guest with us today. Joining us on this sunglasses little rhythm here. Please welcome Sean Beeson. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. I'm really glad to be here on the show.
Man, so you care to do an introduction to all the listeners out there on iHeart Radio and Twitch?
Yeah, my name is Sean Beeson. I'm a composer, sound designer, and producer that works on media, mostly video games, but also films, commercials, trailers, slot machines, jingles. Anything that needs a bleep or a bloop or a soundtrack, I'm willing to take a shot at making some great music or sounds for it.
That's awesome, man. You've been in the business for quite a while, and you have like a variety of different companies that you work with. And tell us about the experience. Like, how is it working in the media industry?
Oh, it's great. I mean, I'd imagine many of your listeners are gamers and consume tons of media. So it's awesome because I'm also a gamer. And so being able to work on games, being able to play while I'm also working is an incredible part of it. And I've been doing it now for, over 20 years I've been doing it professionally. And so it's really just kind of become a part of everyday life for me. And it's great. It's great. And so much has changed in the last 20 years. And there's a lot of really exciting changes on the horizon. And that's kind of why I like it. It's different. It's different every week. It's different every year. That's just fun.
That's awesome. I mean, when you actually have a job that you actually have a passion for, and you have like so many years that you've been doing it, you're actually on the right path to like basically finish your career strong. So
yeah.
So over here, my friend Nightmare has a couple questions lined up. I have a couple questions for you as well. And if we get a couple of the viewers actually come in and ask questions, we'll be asking you those questions as well. So sit back, everybody, and enjoy this ride. Nightmare, I'll hand the torch to you to start off.
Yeah, thanks, Sharky. So what actually got you started with wanting to do the music design and all that?
Playing video games.
Really?
Playing video games. Oh yeah. I my youngest and fondest memories are really of playing Sega Genesis, Mega Drive for any European or Japanese listeners.
That's crazy.
Sega Genesis, and I remember being 4 years old and playing Sega. I didn't really know how to play. You just pushing buttons and stuff. But going into the options, and they always had an option to do a sound test. And turning on the music and getting a tape recorder and recording the music onto a tape because I just loved Sega music. I just loved it. It still is something that just makes me feel so good when I listen to Sega music. Just something about it. It just has edge to it. It's the composers, some of the composers that wrote music for Sega games, phenomenal composers. And so I'd always been interested in it, and I'd always been interested in writing music since I'd been about 10 years old. I just kind of dabbled in writing music, and it wasn't until really the computer music age caught up, digital music got far enough ahead that I was able to start to create my own music without having to use like a tracker, right? Because people that were composing music back in the 8 and 16-bit eras and before were using music trackers. So they're like literally programming, scripting in numbers, and it's very difficult. It's so difficult to do that, and it's time consuming.
Hey, but I mean, it always pays off at the end, right?
Oh, absolutely. But when I really started to get into music, it was right around the time where people could use instruments built into the computer and just hook up a MIDI controller, and you could spit out an MP3 of a track and put that into a game. So that's really kind of what ignited my curiosity in digital music, and I was 13 at that time, and I have not stopped since then.
That's amazing.
Since I've been a teenager.
I can imagine, like, the pressure though, like, when they actually have deadlines. How do you feel, like, whenever, like, they tell you, like, look, we want this, that, like, do you have like a really really big deadline sometimes, or like how does it work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Ranging from people giving me something on Friday and say we need this on Monday,
Oof.
which is, I used to not mind that. When I was younger, when I was 10 years younger, I'd say, yeah, let's go. That's awesome. Let's do this. But now I have 7 kids of varying ages. It's like when somebody's like, hey, I need this over the weekend, I'm like, ooh, I might have some kids that'll be a little disappointed that I'm not spending as much time with them. But that's what comes with the territory of this work, is sometimes you have deadlines that are 2, 3, 4 days, and sometimes you have deadlines that are 6 months. And you really just learn to embrace those deadlines as a challenge. And honestly, I'm grateful that I get to do this work and be self-employed and be freelance.
Oh, that's actually
So everything is a wonderful opportunity.
Gotcha. All right. So how do you feel about like the AI marketing, like, being up there now? I mean, I know it must be a little complicated, but I mean, from your point of view, like, how do you see it?
Yeah, so AI music in particular, I feel, is one area I can comfortably talk about. The other parts of AI, I don't know as much about the AI programming or AI art, but I think AI offers a lot of really unique opportunities. It can offer a lot of help to composers, right? So I do use some AI-assisted mixing tools, right? So a tool that will listen to your music and be like, well, if you want your music to sound better balanced, you should consider doing this. But it doesn't do the work for me. It just offers recommendations. And that's pretty prevalent in music and sound and mixing, to now have AI-assisted helping tools. Some of the tools that will just outright completely compose a piece of music, I think they're kind of fun. I've dabbled with them. I've had AI generate some songs just to be funny. But it is concerning. And I do have a handful of clients, one in particular that said to me, I just want to let you know, they said, in 6 years, we won't need to hire you anymore because AI will be trained good enough and potentially even trained off of my music to be able to create something that's as good as what I can create. And of course, I just say, okay, whatever. But I think what they fail to realize is that as a musician, as a composer, I'm not just spitting out music. Yes, that is the end result, but really, we are like psychologists, right? We have to figure out what music to create to solicit the correct emotional response in a game, because that's so important, or in a movie, right? You want somebody to feel sad. There's a million different ways that you can do that, and AI is just going to randomly pick some way to do it unless it's trained to do something very specific. But somebody that has experience, that can maybe read between the lines of what needs to be done and maybe do something that's different than what's expected, might yield a unique and better result. So I think AI is in its infancy. I think in 10 years, it will be completely different than how we see it now. I will definitely lose clients to it, but I think that all tools offer positives and negatives. It just depends on how we use it, and I hope that it's used responsibly.
Right. And also another thing too is that, I mean, some people think like, oh, AI is going to take over and everything. I see it as like you said, I mean, a tool is actually a good thing, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, whenever, like, you go and you have a GPS doesn't know, like, when you take shortcuts and everything like that yet. So I mean, that's why, like, we're still there, but we shouldn't let, like, AI, like, things do that for us, because that would only make us lazy at the end of the day. Like, it would make us like, oh, well, I'm not doing anything today. I mean, I'll just let the robot do everything for me. And I mean, if we keep going in that path, we're gonna fall into that, and we have to actually be cautious of that, because eventually, if that keeps up, we're all gonna be basically unemployed with nothing to do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's tough.
And I think a great example is an action film. Say that there's an action sequence, a firefight. I think the natural inclination is to have music that matches the intensity of that scene. If it's a firefight, very action oriented music, very busy, aggressive. However, we've seen in movies where they will really pull the music back, and it's an Italian aria with opera singing, right? And there's something that's like beautiful about that makes no sense. It doesn't really make sense on the surface. That AI is not going to understand how something like that can bring about different emotions from the viewer than understanding that it's just an action scene. It should feel aggressive, it should feel busy, it should feel angry or whatever. So I think there's a lot of things that a real human is just going to infer differently, and it's going to understand the audience and the context, but also is going to be able to see the future a little bit different, set the future tone of what music can do, whereas AI is really just learning from the past. So I think it always needs a human to be forward moving. And I guess my hope is that I can position myself so that I'm not just a person that just spits out music, but somebody that can actually be an authority as to how music should perform, how music should help the audience react to it. But AI will be a part of that as well in the future too. There's no denying that.
Absolutely. I mean, we just have to be careful how we use it. And now we got Nightmare here, Ray, for some questions here. So Nightmare, back to you.
Yeah, we talked about deadlines earlier. Um, in terms of like the best job you've had with like an easy deadline, and the opposite end of that, the like not the best job. Okay, not really the worst, but not one you enjoyed as much. With the most strict deadline, which two would you pick out of everything you've done so far?
Yeah. Yeah, so I can't name particular projects, I think, because, or at least on the side that's very tight, but I would always prefer to take a deadline that is that tends to be longer, just because that allows me to make mistakes with my music. It allows me to self-review my music and to self-moderate my music. Whereas if it's a really tight deadline, there's not even really time to think about how the music should be and to make mistakes with the music, right? Like they've only allotted enough time for you to do it once, and that's just got to be it. And I had a film where I had 4 weeks to write 90 minutes of music. It's so much. It's so much. At that point, you're working 60 plus hours a week. You really have to make very intelligent creative decisions. So even though I don't like the deadlines on those super short projects, I like that process, right? Where you're saying, I just need to do what I know works. I need to do what I know is effective. There's no time to experiment or to get off into the weeds. You just have to focus exactly on what needs to be accomplished, but still be creative and still be musical. So even though that's like super stressful, it feels really constrained. There's something about that that's freeing, because at that point the world is not open to you with your music, because you just don't have the time luxury. You really just have to say, it's got to be in a box this big, and I have to make that good in that little box. So I've had films like that I would never prefer to do it that way. But somehow that's yielded some of my very best music. Some of my most emotional music has been in those very tight time periods. Whereas a longer time period is great. And I've worked with a handful of clients, one of which is Galaxy Civilizations 4, which is a 4X strategy game, where it's had a prolonged development period. And so that really allowed me to experiment throughout parts of the score and really write music. And then if it wasn't good, I could throw away what parts of it I didn't like. and I could keep the parts that were good. And through that, 6 to 10 month period, you start to develop a voice for the score, right? You start to see these little threads that connect all of the pieces because you've had that time to really work those ideas, those concepts. And some of them are really low level concepts, like, oh, I'm just always going to use this sound. And some of them are high concepts where I'm like, I'm going to use this motif. Like, this is the alien theme, or this is the this kind of a space theme, or this is the mysterious space theme, and you weave that in and out through the score. And the fans, the gamers, they recognize that. They hear those things. The gamers, they're not dumb. They know what they're listening to, and they hear that. And when they hear that and they connect those dots, you're like, oh, like you feel like people are actually listening to what you do. And that's so rewarding as well. So I think there's good and bad situations with both ends of the spectrum. But usually breakneck speeds, it's stressful. You lose sleep.
Man. But I mean, the thing is that you never. What is that saying they have? No room for error or whatever. I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's the same thing with us content creators. I mean, we have to actually be precise with what we have to show the public, because whatever we show out there, it's gonna be out there somewhere after you finish. Like if you do an error, everyone's gonna know about it. Like oh, this happened. It's tough out there. I mean, especially for musicians like yourself. For us as content creators, it's just tough out there. Like some people think that it's just turn on a bar and go live and then do whatever. No, dude. Once you get yourself out there to the world, you're basically under a magnifying glass and everyone's watching what you do.
And a podcast like this, dozens, hundreds of hours of work just to get to the point of even regularly producing shows. And the score is the same way, right? I mean, from the time I start composing notes, there's already been a ton of work that's been put into it up to that point. And very often with those tight deadlines, I always say that I'm just going to Bob Ross it. Mm-hmm. And so Bob Ross, the artist who would be like, I'm going to paint a tree there. And occasionally he would, I don't know if you would say make it a mistake. He would do something. He'd be like, that's just a happy little mistake. And sometimes you have that in your music, where it's like there's just something in it that's not as perfect as I want it to be. But at a certain point, you just surrender control and you just say, this is a tight deadline. I'm doing the best music I can do, and I think this is the best outcome for the score. And 99% of the time, people will never notice or have any attention drawn to those mistakes. They just live in my head as being issues.
So basically, whenever you actually get fans come up to you and praise your work and remind you of what you did and everything like that, I bet it feels amazing, to just get recognized by the public itself, especially the fans out there. I mean, it feels.
Yeah, I mean, I live in a very remote area, so I rarely see people. I mean, I will oftentimes go. Not as much anymore, but there would be times where I would go a week or two without really seeing many people. Just because I live in kind of a remote area. But it is fun when I'm out in public and people will either recognize my name or they'll say that they've heard my music, or even, for example, I've made some ringtones and alarm sounds and notification sounds for Google devices. And so I'll be in a restaurant or a bar, I'll be out with my family and I'll hear one of my sounds. I'll be like, that's my sound. And it's fun. It's fun.
That's awesome. So what was it like working with I'm gonna say an example. What was it like working with Disney? Just curious. I mean, how was that?
Yeah, so I've worked with a lot of different Disney production companies. So when I worked on Disney projects, it was very often through other producers or other companies that were either subsidiaries or long-time, permanent contractors for Disney. So it's never like I really got to work specifically, with maybe the exception of one project. I never really worked specifically with the Disney teams directly, but it was usually through proxy of other companies. And the experience, honestly, was always very good. I love to write magical, lighthearted, positive music, right? I like to write music that just makes you feel bright inside. And I I just always remember I would write music, and this happened on multiple Disney projects with different companies. They'd say, it's really good. I just need a little more magic. I'd be like, you need more chimes, right? Like the little Tinkerbell kind of sounds. And you would just drop those in and they'd be like, perfect. And it was like that. So you learn to understand some of that lingo. When they would say they want more magic, they would want more of like those glistening metal bell-like sounds, because we equate that sound with something that's magical. And really, almost we equate it with the Disney sound now, because they've utilized that so much. And I love writing that kind of music. So it was always a great experience, whether it was some of their amusement park stuff or working on Pixie Hollow was great, and a handful of advertisements for them.
Now, which one out of everybody that you worked with, like just somebody out there that like you actually grew up actually looking up to, like, who was somebody that you actually like, hey, I look up to you because you're the inspiration, like, that made me actually want to start this. Like, who was that person that was that for you?
Yeah, so this is going to sound weird, but Yanni. I really liked Yanni. Yanni, the pianist. Or we mostly know him as the pianist now, but he produced a lot of electronic music way back in the day. And I didn't even know it was his music at the time. I would get burnt CDs from people, stuff where they ripped off a bunch of music from Napster, of course. That's what we all did in the late 90s or early 2000s or whatever. And it would just be a CD full of his music. And I would just listen to it nonstop. Just nonstop. And I didn't know who it was. And it wasn't until I was much older that I was like, this was Yanni's early music. And so much of it is very electronic that he was a huge inspiration. And then Philip Glass, the American minimalist composer. He's still alive, still creating music. And his sound is iconic. And I think we hear it almost everywhere now. I mean, he's influenced a major part of film and game music. But I've been listening to Philip Glass since I was 12 years old. And he's just been a huge inspiration because his music does so little, but says so much. If anybody's ever listened to his music, sometimes it's just very small musical ideas that are repeated so much, but there's something about it that really makes it so good for being in a game or being in a film, because it really sets a tone, it accompanies a mood, and it's very flexible, it's very modular, and really you can sculpt it, sound however you want.
That's awesome. What you got, Nightmare?
Yeah, so with the area you're at, the few different like game conventions that go on around you, do you go there and just kind of like try to sneak in, or do you just go there and everybody recognizes you? Or
yeah, for the most part, nobody knows who I am. I just kind of go in incognito, and this, especially now that I have a mustache, people would recognize me more. But there for a while, I think the only pictures of me that were online were ones without a mustache. And so then I had a mustache, and people didn't really recognize who I was. So I kind of go in as a man of mystery. And I think audio people in general, unless you are, the top of the list A-tier composer, I think a majority of composers that we hear in games, you maybe wouldn't even recognize them if you passed them on the street. I think a lot of them are just your average looking person, just average looking person, very easy to talk to. I think a lot of composers are really down to earth people. I think a lot of us are kind of shy, maybe a little introverted, just because we spend a lot of our time in a studio by ourselves, producing music. But yeah, people recognize me a lot now when I go to these conventions. I enjoy it. I enjoy being around people, because the other majority of my time I'm either by myself or I'm being crawled on by 7 children, which is great too. But adult human interaction is wonderful.
I was gonna say, like, you're trying to be like the Dalmatians, the 101 Dalmatians, how they have a lot of them.
Right.
That's awesome though. 7 kids, man. That's incredible. I mean, I have 4 nieces, and they're little troublemakers, but I love them to death. And
Yeah.
it's amazing whenever like you actually introduce them to like old music, because I mean like the 90s, like music from back then. Nobody, not that many people appreciate 70s, 80s, 90s music anymore. Like you show them that and they're like, what is this? I don't like this, or whatever. They just want stuff that repeats itself every so often. They're not used to like original music, and that's what we like about back then.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right, so this is actually not a music related question, but what is a go-to meal for Sean to actually go to every day?
If I could eat it every day, pizza.
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 Okay.
100% pizza. I think it is the greatest food ever made is pizza.
Okay, so we do have a couple of questions that I have to deal with that later today. It's actually like our little, we call this segment, excuse my language, WTF segment, because I mean it's just questions that don't have to do nothing with like the interview, and it's gonna make you scratch your head. And most of the time when we ask some of these questions, like it makes our guests like think like, what made you want to ask that? Like, what in the world are you thinking? So that's actually our little segment that we have. So
Yeah, great.
So we're actually going to go to our commercial break here, and we'll be back in a few minutes with a few more questions, and then after that we'll wrap up everything from here. So stay tuned, everybody, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. All right, we are back. Man, just seeing commercials like we have right now, like with the new phones, makes me think like, man, I am that old that now basically phones have freaking AI technology as well. Like, Jesus Christ, man, where did time go? I mean, I remember the time I used to have the original BlackBerry, the one that actually had the pen next to it. I used to have
Don't
that.
forget the passwords on those.
Oh my gosh.
Hey,
Just like those. I mean, now we all have like freaking blocks for phones, and back then, I mean, we basically had dial-up internet. We had all this stuff, and now basically everything is just so weird. I mean, if I could go back to the past and actually show this phone, I got a feeling that will probably have people turning heads like, what in the world are you holding? But all right, so basically, Nightmare, you want to start with a funny question, or you want to you have a couple questions?
I've got one more question I got to ask. So again, multiple projects you've done. What style of project would you say was your favorite?
yes, yeah. So my favorite kind of a project is a game. Scoring games, and if I had to say even more specific, I would say some kind of a fantasy game. I love to write fantasy music. I love to write music that feels like it's inspired by things that are unreal, things that are surreal. Things that are more than what we could just imagine. Because I think with music, then it's enriching to just be able to create something that just really like lifts that up. So I think it's a great challenge, but it's also something that I enjoy the most, is to say, here's this unreal part of a game, here's this different city or a different battle or a different event. It needs music that's unique to it, that I just get to envision how that sounds, and when you hear it in the game, it just lifts it up in such a big way. And that's just great to be able to hear your music and interact with it as you're playing. Because in games, anytime you play a game, it's different all the time. Mm-hmm. It's different every time. So I think that allows me to create music that feels like it tells a story alongside the story that's being told, and people will hear it and experience it and perceive it in different and unique ways. Myself included. So I think that's great. That's my favorite kind of a project to work on, is fantasy games.
So basically, like RPGs, things like that, like Final Fantasy, like just.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome. So I know, like, we know that you're a music composer, but was there any time during your path of the music industry that you said, like, you know what, I kind of want to try something else besides composing music? Was there any time that you had doubts of what you wanted to do?
Not doubts in being a composer, but I think before I was a composer, the only other thing I thought about doing, there was two things I thought about doing. And one was I considered temporarily the vocation of becoming a priest, and then realized that I was not interested in that. But then the next thing was being a ghost hunter.
Really?
I was interested in the studying of parapsychology because I was interested in understanding why people see things that they see, why people experience things the way that they see, because I was so interested in understanding the unknown or trying to understand how people experience the unknown. And this would have been in the early 2000s, and I told my parents, I said, I really want to study parapsychology because I'm interested in the paranormal, the unknown, and I want to understand how that works. And my dad says, where are you gonna get a job? Being a ghost hunter? And I said, yeah, maybe, I don't know. And then when my dad was like, you're not gonna do that, I was like, okay, I guess I'll just be a composer instead. But the irony of that is I really missed out on all the ghost hunter shows. I could have had my own ghost hunter show on Sci-Fi or Travel or Discovery, who knows?
I mean, I can imagine doing that, and then basically, like, imagine if you did that and you actually composed the music for your show. I mean, that would, like, be the perfect combination, actually.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And the thing is I'm not sure I ever believed in ghosts all that much, but I wanted to explore and to understand the psychology of it and the science behind any of it. So it still fascinates me to this day.
And on top of that, you're not that far from one of the most famous spots in the state. So
yeah,
man, just the whole paranormal
reformatory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like, the whole paranormal world. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe they are real. I mean, some people say they experience them and everything. I have not experienced one yet, but I mean, if I do, that would actually terrify me. I'll probably be scared, but I mean, after that, I'll be like, how in the world is this happening? I mean, but I mean, with the whole, like, we talked to AI and all the stuff, people make so many things so realistic that it's scary. I'm like, my God, this looks real, but it's not. That's what scares me nowadays. It's like, dude, what to believe that's real and what to believe that's not real. So I mean, it's tough out there to do that. But I mean, if you could go back to paranormal, like, investigations and all this ghost stuff, would you actually go back to it, or you would just, like, go to haunted houses and check it out?
No, I mean, I think at this point I've hung up my my electromagnetic frequency detector. I've hung up all my ghost hunting gear at this point. And I think back then my interest was mostly that if people are seeing things and they are real, that's incredible, and I want to understand that. If people are seeing things and it's not a real thing, that still is incredible. That the brain, the human body can experience these things that are so unknown. Ranging from ghostly experiences to near-death experiences to seeing unidentified objects or even abduction or Bigfoot. All those things where if it's real, there's a lot of research, a lot of understanding, and a lot of science behind it. Even if the things aren't real, still is a lot of understanding and psychology behind it. So I think I'm always interested in that. But being a composer is just kind of what I'm meant to do, and I'm really happy where I'm at.
Gotcha. So you mentioned pizza earlier for your favorite food, like, go to, like, every day. What is your favorite topping?
It's gonna sound really simple, but just a good pepperoni.
Really?
Somebody said you can only have one topping. Just give me real pepperoni. Like good pepperoni on the pizza.
You had to try a New York pizza then, because New York is known for, like, really good pizzas. But I mean, at least you're not like my co-host here that loves freaking pineapples on pizza, because my God, he's...
Look, I like pineapples on pizza, but it is not my favorite topping.
Yeah, but you always say, "Oh, it's all about the toppings."
It is all about the toppings. If you get pineapple with certain toppings, it tastes better.
I personally think fruit does not belong in pizza. That's just the type of person I am. But anyways, okay. So are we ready?
Pineapple and bacon and a hot red pepper. Ooh, and some chicken. It's kind of nice how the pineapple, the sweet balances out the spicy and the salty. I will eat I'll eat anything on pizza. People are like, "What do you like on it?" I'm like, I don't care. Just make sure that it's warm, or even if it's cold, I'll eat it. I love pizza.
So pan, hand tossed, or thin crust?
I really should probably eat thin crust. That would probably be best for my health. But a good deep dish pizza is great when it's got that really, yeah, I like a deep dish pizza.
That sounds really good, actually. All right, so Nightmare, what you got?
That was the last actual question I had. All mine's just the WTF questions.
All right, so
After
go
that,
ahead
so-
and get started with those.
All right. Given your expertise here, Android or iPhone, which one do you prefer?
Do I have to explain why?
No.
Android.
Really? Okay, so you're like my co-host because I'm Apple.
I love Apple devices. In fact, I think they make phenomenal hardware. But I constantly need to transfer files. I need to do some weird things with the phone sometimes. Just with transferring files and doing business things that on an iPhone or iDevices in period is kind of hard. But believe me, I have iPads and iPhones as well. But I'm on Android right now because it makes my work a little easier.
Absolutely. I mean, I heard there's like more freedom to do whatever you want with the Androids. The only thing I don't like is how complex for me it is to navigate through. While iPhones I've been having since the 4, but I mean before the 4, I was always a BlackBerry person. I always loved the BlackBerry models. The funny story about that is that I started with the BlackBerries. I was constantly getting like the Curve, the Bold. I was excited to get the next one, and I told the retailer like, hey, are there gonna be any new BlackBerries? Like, no, this is the last one. You have to upgrade to an iPhone or a Samsung. So like, I guess I'll go iPhone. I mean, why not? Right when I got that phone, right when he handed it to me, he's like, "Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, there is a new BlackBerry, but it's not gonna be for 2 years." I was like, "Now you tell me when I upgrade from an iPhone? I mean, come on." Like, I can't.
Could have gotten the Microsoft phone. And then you would have regretted that, though, too, right?
Yeah, but now.
But Apple devices, I think they're incredibly powerful. That I think I'm interested in Apple stuff in the sense that they're like one step away from being a mobile, not a portable gaming device. I feel like they could make something like a Nintendo Switch out of the iPhone pretty easily if they released, an official Apple controller and just did some stuff with the user experience, because the phones themselves are powerful enough to be gaming devices.
Have you seen the specs of a 16 Pro Max camera wise?
No, is it good?
I think it's like almost 50 megapixels and 4K 120 FPS for video. Like, that's
Crazy.
But they still don't have 100 times zoom.
Oh my gosh. Now he's trying to get me with this. All right. So another funny out of nowhere question. What if you could have any superpower out there, no matter what it is, what would it be and why?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think if I could have any superpower, it would be oh gosh, that's a really tough one. Because I think there's part of me that would want to have the superpower just to live forever. Just because I want to see what it's going to be like in 1,000 years. But the reality of that is, I think after like 100 years, I'd be like, okay, I'm ready to just die. And it'd be like, sorry that you picked the one where you never die. You have to live forever now. And I'd be like, oh.
I mean, basically, like, you'll witness the end of everything, and then you'll be like, okay, now I'm all alone. What to do now?
Yeah.
There's nobody here. But That's the only good thing about that is that you'll be able to see the transitions of what the planet will actually go through, like, from being us being here to like a whole complete wasteland with nothing left. I mean, that's the only
Yeah.
good thing. But the sad thing about that, you're alone. Nobody's there. You're gonna have to find another group of people, like, or creatures. We don't know what's out there. I mean, I wish there was actually aliens, because I would love to talk to an alien. Kid you not. But anyways, all right, Nightmare, what you got?
I think I would. Yeah, I think I would pick a power to be able to bring, I guess, bring people peace or bring people calm. Right? I know that seems like a weird power, but it's like there's so many people in life that I think we're surrounded by that I'm like, you just need to just feel chill. You just need to feel good. Just feel peace for like 10 minutes in your life. And I think that would be an awesome superpower. Because I'm like, I don't know. If I had flight, I'd fly around for a little bit and be like, okay, I'm kind of done with this. Or if I could stretch, I'd be like, okay, well, I'll just stretch everywhere. And after a while, so many of the powers are just things you would use for yourself. And I'm like, I don't know. That'd get really boring. Exactly. But imagine if there was somebody who was sick or somebody who was distraught that you could just, you don't. It's not like you need to heal everybody or feed everybody. But if you could just bring people some peace or bring somebody joy, I don't know. That would be a really cool thing.
Just make everybody at peace, so that way there's no wars, there's no nothing like that, and just everybody get along. Because at the end of the day, we all are the same in the inside. We all basically have the same flesh. So I mean, why can't we get along? I mean, that's what I don't get about the world sometimes. It's like, dude, I mean, we all were born under. We're all the same species. So I mean, why? What's so hard? I mean, it's difficult. All right, so
yeah.
Nightmare, what you got now?
So we've talked about pizza. I want to kind of switch up a little bit. I'm assuming you've been out of where you're at for pizza before.
Yes.
It's a safe assumption. Bakers or like one of the bigger chains, like a small little like restaurant like Baker's or Paisanello's, or a bigger chain. Which kind of pizza?
Yeah. So I mean, Baker's. I've never had terrible pizza from Baker's.
Oh, no.
I've had some pizzas that were above average. I've had lots of great pizzas from Baker's. But I've had a lot of mid pizzas from Little Caesars or Domino's. Pisanello's, also a place where I've always had pretty good pizza experience there. And I think some of the best pizza I've had has been from Pisanello's. It's been years since I've had their pizza. But every pizza place is going to have bad pizzas. And actually, I just ate pizza before I came on the show tonight. And it was from a pizza place in Mansfield that was pretty well raved about. And one of the pizzas we got was very good. It was a deluxe pizza, no olives. Ooh. The other pizza was a barbecue chicken pizza. And it is possibly one of the worst pizzas I've had in a long time. And I'm not picky when it comes to pizza. I will eat pizza that has sat out for 24 hours and is stiff as a rock. I don't care. I'll eat it. But that pizza was just not good. So I think for me, a pizza place that consistently has good warm pizza, Giannino's is another one. Shout out to Giannino's. That their pizza usually is pretty good. I haven't had too many bad pies from them.
All right. So if you had to choose between voice acting and acting, what would you choose?
Oh, definitely voice acting. I was in a few plays in high school, and it gives me terrible stage fright. And to this day, as an adult, over 20 years later, I still have nightmares where I will wake up in the middle of the night, hot sweat, because I'm in my nightmare. I'm at the play and I forgot my lines. It still haunts me to this day. And that never happened in real life. That never happened. I went through 4 years of musicals and plays and never really forgot lines. So I don't know why I'm having nightmares as an adult, but I'll wake up and my teeth will hurt because I'll have been like grinding my teeth and I'll be sweaty. It was only a dream. It was only a dream. Definitely voice acting. Voice acting, I just get to sit in here with a microphone by myself. I'm usually in shorts. Sometimes I'm wearing a shirt. Depends how hot it is outside. Just drinking coffee or drinking water or whatever, and I get to voice act much better.
That's funny. All right, what you got, Nightmare?
Since we kind of talked about fear, I'm gonna go ahead and ask this one. What's a scarier thought for you? Flying sharks or tigers with the ability to breathe underwater?
Tigers that can breathe underwater, 100%. I don't like water. I would not say to go as far as say that I am phobic of water, but I do my best to stay away from large bodies of water. So if there's tigers in the water, that's terrifying. Although maybe it would be kind of sweet if we could get a Netflix show called Water Tiger King. You know, like Tiger King, but with water tigers. But also, somebody from the country, the thought of sharks flying in the air, I'm like, people around here, they would shoot them like a raccoon or a skunk or something, you know? So if there's sharks flying overhead, they'd be like, oh, there's another loose shark. We better take care of it. Unless they would be protected. If they were a protected species, then of course they wouldn't shoot them, right?
Or unless they actually had like a whole freaking armor with them and a laser beam stuck to their head. I mean, that would actually be terrifying.
Freaking laser beam.
I got you. All right, so this question gets a lot of our guests really to think for a second. Like, you know, like they actually go, what the F is wrong with you, Luis? Like, why would you actually think this way? So, have you ever eaten cereal in your life? Because there's some people that haven't eaten cereal ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Too much cereal.
All right. So, do you pour the cereal first and then the milk, or the milk first and then the cereal?
You have to pour the cereal first.
Okay.
If you pour the milk first, sometimes you get splashback. We all know that, right? Come on, haven't you put in the bowl and you put the spoon in it, and you pour the milk and it hits the spoon, and you're like, ow, and it shoots the milk all over the place. The cereal has to break the splash of the milk.
Okay. Well, you're talking to somebody that puts the milk first and then the cereal.
Monster.
We just got another funny reaction because
Okay, hold on. The better question: what do the kids do?
Oh, there you go.
Well, usually what they do is they pour the cereal first, and then when they go to pour the milk, they knock the bowl over, and it's just, there's a half gallon of milk all over my floor. And I'm here to tell you that vitamin D is a lot stickier on the floor than skim milk.
Man, that's just funny. All right, what you got, Nightmare?
Okay, so the area you live in, I'm sure you've gone camping before. Do you prefer camping in a tent or in a structure like a camper, cabin, RV, something like that?
Yeah. So, I'd like to think I'm a bit of a country boy. Like, I have no problems getting in the sticks, getting dirty, stuff like that. But when it comes to sleep, I have a very particular. I'm very particular about my sleep, and I'd like to think that I am like Count Dracula. Because it's like Count Dracula has always got to sleep in a dark room, in a coffin with his arms crossed, and the coffin's got to be closed, really dark. I'm sure it's quiet, no garlic, no holy water, and that's how he's got to sleep. And I'm the same way, where I'm like, I really only sleep good if it's a certain way, and tents are just they don't allow for that kind of sleep. It's hard, on a hard ground. It's not climate controlled. I need to be very cold when I sleep.
No, I like the cold. I'm a big fan of the cold weather. Like, usually when I sleep, I constantly flip my pillow so that way, like, when it's warm, flip it the other way, literally get the cold part, wait for that, flip it again, back and forth, until I'm actually really cozy and cold. Because, dude,
yeah.
I cannot stand the hot weather.
Yeah, so I'm not so much against tents because, like, snakes or dirt or like, I don't like to be in the woods as much as what I'm just like, I really like to be sleeping a certain way, and I think glamping is more conducive to that.
All right, so this is actually our final question before we actually start with the shout-outs. So you're on your way home, and you have two paths to go home. If you go on the left path, you're gonna face a bear-sized goose. Okay, like you have no weapons home. Like all you have is your fist to get through to that monster. If you go to the right, you're gonna face 100 geese-sized bears. So, which path would you take home and why?
100 geese-sized bears. I would definitely pick that one.
Really?
100 geese-sized bears, absolutely. Geese are incredibly easy to agitate. I mean, you get too close to a goose, and it'll be like, I'm going to chase after you for no reason. And if it can most of the time, you're like, thank goodness I can waddle quicker than that goose can waddle, and I can get away. But if it's big, that'll be a problem. And bears, if it's a goose-sized bear, maybe if you maybe if you kick one, it'll scare the rest of them off. I would take my bets with the 100 geese-sized bears and hope that they're just very docile. Mm-hmm. And then if I go roar, that they'll run away.
Gotcha. Now, there's we had a guest here on the podcast a few years back that actually mentioned to us that if you point a green laser pointer at a goose's feet, they get intimidated and they back away and they do not approach you anymore. We still have that theory.
So it sounds like I'd be dead then if I went up against 100 geese-sized bears. Brown bears or black bears? What kind of a bear?
Yeah,
you didn't specify.
It's actually a grizzly bear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm dead.
The claws basically will get you. All right.
Yeah, I'm done for.
Gotcha. All right. So, final thoughts. Any shout outs that you want to give out there, Sean, to anybody out there?
Yeah, just a shout out to all the listeners of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and yeah, that's all.
I appreciate.
Just keep tuning to the show and keep supporting games. Keep supporting composers. I think you don't know how much it means to us when people actually listen to the music and say, "Hey, thanks. This was good."
Awesome. And one final thought that I was gonna say is I might actually reach out to you in the future and might actually ask you if you're okay with writing a piece for us for our podcast. That would be amazing. So to have it here.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we always love. We have a decent intro right now, but I always feel because I'm actually from Louisiana, so I always like the whole jazzy vibes type feeling kind of music. Mm-hmm. So that's the main reason. And in case you want to know, the reason why we started this podcast is because we love to promote people like you, acknowledge the hard work that you guys did. And we also love, and respect everybody here. I mean, we don't just interview the big people, but we also interview, the small content creators, the indie game developers. We promote everybody that deserves a promotion because at the end of the day, we all the same. There's nobody that's actually up there. There's someone that's low down there. So, I mean, we always make sure everybody gets taken care of and gets promoted the right way.
Heck yeah. Thank you.
No problem. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this about wraps this episode of the Reef Podcast for the month. We are actually going to be back the next month in October. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a couple more, and I'm excited to share a couple of news on the month of December. Me and my co-host here are going to let you guys know what's going to happen next year, because next year is our 5th year anniversary of the Reef Podcast. So on behalf of me, Nightmare, any last thoughts?
Nope. I know next week we got another podcast episode. Couple actual personal friends of mine as well.
We have a couple of people, and we actually are booked until 2026. So I'm actually excited because it's a long way to go. But I mean, people have asked me hey, to kind of be part of it. I'm like, just wait till next year. Wait till sometime next year so I can start booking you, because my God, we're very booked right now. And Sean, thank you again for being here. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Keep doing what you're doing. And maybe we'll see you in a part 2 whenever you feel like you want to promote yourself again. By all means, reach out and we'll be happy to have you here again.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. As always, today's episode of the Reef Podcast was streamed live on Twitch. If you could not make it to the live stream of the podcast, you can always listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and iHeart Radio. Thanks for listening. See you next time.